All right, today we are tackling a huge topic, the geography of faith. We're going to try and visualize the entire vast landscape of global belief using data, using maps, to really get a handle on how these systems have shaped our world. So let's get into it and start unpacking this massive story, one map at a time. I mean, it's a massive question, right? How in the world can you even begin to chart something as personal, as complex, as faith, but on a global scale? Well, the journey doesn't actually start with billions. It starts with just a few individuals who sparked movements that would literally change the course of history. Right, so before we can even think about mapping the followers, we kind of have to go back to the origins. See, many of the world's biggest belief systems, they can be traced back to just a handful of pretty remarkable figures. Prophets, philosophers, teachers, people whose ideas would just ripple across millennia. Now, what's really wild about this, when you look at the timeline, is the separation. You've got Siddhartha Gautama in India, Confucius over in China, and then centuries later, Jesus in the Middle East. Just think about that for a second. These people lived in completely different worlds. They had absolutely no knowledge of one another, yet their teachings would go on to independently shape the spiritual lives of billions. And that, of course, brings us to today. From those individual sparks, these massive global communities have formed. The scale, it's just truly staggering. So let's take a look at the numbers. So this chart, which uses data from around 2012, gives us the big picture breakdown. And it's no surprise, really. Christianity and Islam are the two heavyweights, making up more than half of all humanity combined. But what I find fascinating here is the third largest group. It's not another religion, it's the unaffiliated. That's a huge and growing demographic we're going to come back to. Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around that number. 2.2 billion people. That's more than the entire population of the planet just 100 years ago. It makes Christianity the largest religious group, spreading from this tiny movement in ancient Judea to literally every corner of the globe. The scale of that journey, it's just incredible. And right behind that, you've got Islam, with 1.6 billion followers. And it's not just the second largest, it's also often cited by demographers as the fastest growing major religion in the world. And, as we're about to see, the population center of Islam might not be where you think it is. And here we are again with that massive, unaffiliated group, 1.1 billion people. Now, it's really important to get this. This isn't just one thing. This category includes atheists, agnostics, and tons of people who might have personal spiritual beliefs, but just don't follow a traditional, organized religion. This makes it a huge force in the global landscape of belief. Okay, so we've got the how many, but to really get the story of religion, we need to ask where. So let's switch gears, pull up some maps, and see how this all plays out geographically. And there it is, the world painted by faith. You can see Christianity's blue hues sweeping across the Americas, Europe, and Southern Africa, and then this vast green belt of Islam stretching from North Africa all the way to Indonesia. And then you have these incredible, dense concentrations, like that vibrant pink of Hinduism just blazing out from the Indian subcontinent. Putting them side by side like this, you can really see the distinct spheres of influence. I mean, sure, they overlap in some fascinating ways, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, but for the most part, these two maps tell a story of two faiths that, for centuries, just expanded in largely different directions, shaping entire continents as they went. Now, this map shows a completely different kind of pattern. Unlike Christianity and Islam, which spread far and wide, Hinduism is deeply tied to the culture and history of the Indian subcontinent. And the result is just striking. As that deep red shows, over 90% of all the Hindus in the world live in India. Buddhism's journey has a really fascinating twist. So it started in India, right? But then it spread eastward, almost like a wave. And as this map shows, it didn't really maintain a large following in its own birthplace. Instead, it became this dominant cultural and religious force all across Southeast and East Asia. So those maps are great for the 30,000-foot view, but the data itself holds some really fascinating surprises when you start to zoom in. So let's drill down to a country-by-country breakdown and see what that tells us. Okay, check this out. If I were to ask you to name the country with the most Christians, you might say Italy, maybe Spain. But nope, the United States is number 1, followed by Brazil and Mexico. And just look at number 5, Nigeria. It has a larger Christian population than the Philippines, France, or even Italy. This data totally flips the script on the idea of Christianity as just a Western religion. Today, its center of gravity is shifting, and it's shifting to the global south.
Now let's do the same for Islam. If you had to guess the country with the most Muslims, you'd probably say Saudi Arabia or Egypt, right? But the data, it tells a completely different story. The top 4 most populous Muslim nations are Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. They're all in South and Southeast Asia. I mean, this single slide completely reframes the entire geography of the Muslim world for a lot of people.
So far, we've looked at these massive populations, entire countries. For this last part, let's zoom all the way in, from the continental scale down to the most intimate level of belief, the specific, exact points on the map that believers consider to be sacred ground.
So what is a sacred site? Well, it's where the vast abstract idea of faith becomes a real, tangible place. It's a destination for a pilgrimage, it's a focal point for prayer, it's basically where belief is literally grounded in the earth.
Our little tour starts in the Middle East, and the sheer density of sacred sites here is just mind-blowing. This small stretch of land is the historic heartland for 3 of the world's major religions. The geography is incredibly layered. You have holy sites for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, sometimes just a few streets apart from each other, creating this spiritual landscape that's unlike anywhere else on Earth. Okay, let's move east to South Asia. We see a similar density, but a totally different story. The Indian subcontinent is a cradle of spirituality. It gave birth to 4 major world religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Every single dot on this map is a temple, a sacred river, a pilgrimage site, reflecting this immense and ancient spiritual diversity. And for our final stop, Western Europe. Here you can literally see the layers of belief mapped right onto the lands. You've got these prehistoric pagan sites like Stonehenge, whose original meanings are basically lost to time, sitting on the same map as these grand cathedrals: Canterbury, Chartres, Santiago de Compostela, that were the spiritual backbone of Christian Europe for 1,000 years. This map is just a testament to how beliefs can shift and evolve and build right on top of one another over millennia. So after looking at all of this, from individual founders to global populations to these tiny specific dots on a map, we're left with this question. This complex, overlapping, and deeply human map of faith, it's not just a bunch of statistics. It's a map of our history, of migration, of culture. It's a map of one of the most fundamental drivers of human civilization. So what does it tell you?